Rewrite me ex-wife, cheated on me with my golden child brother and gave birth to his infant. Now my circle of relatives, which constantly hated me, begs for cash after her. I get promoted. I 29 meters were given divorced from my wife to 7F 2 months in the past. She'd been cheating on me with my estranged brother. 27 meters for a while, and 4 months in the past, I in the end located out when she instructed me that she was pregnant to start with. She attempted to convince me that the child changed into ours, but my brother's common visits made me question the whole lot, so I determined to test her telephone. I faced her about something I determined, and he or she ended up confessing that she'd been cheating on me with my brother for the reason that she quite plenty had no different option anymore. My own family and I hadn't been on speakman terms ever, in view that I left home once I became 18, that they had constantly dealt with me like an intruder even in my family, and my brother turned into the golden child I concept, that it was a little weird to start the celebration meant for me without me. However, then I noticed the cake and absolutely lost it. I subsequently faced my mother and father and asked them why they hadn't thrown me a celebration for an real actual achievement instead, and they advised me that after my attractiveness letter they didn't need my brother to sense not noted, so that they threw him a celebration alternatively, and as opposed to throwing a tantrum, I ought to be trying to uplift my brother as properly. That simply completely broke me, and that very day I made up my thoughts to in no way come again to them ever again, and I caught to it. I paid my way via college by way of taking out a mortgage and working, after which rented a tiny apartment with a friend after I became achieved with university. I by no means spoke to my mother and father when I moved out for college, and neither did they, are attempting to get through to me both of direction. A long time have handed, because then and final year, my brother reached out to me online to invite if I wanted to reconnect with him and my parents, in view that they really seemed to overlook me a lot had took place on the grounds that I'd left home like 2 years ago. I'd gotten married to my ex-spouse. I turned into leading a totally cushy lifestyles, but I don't suppose I'd ever moved on from something had happened with my mother and father, so I did end up agreeing to meet them. It was awkward and felt uncomfortable to start with, however, they were making an effort to restore something they accomplished to me inside the past, so I felt obliged to take some time for them as well, so I invited them to my domestic as properly, and I guessed it changed into my first mistake, introducing my brother to my ex. They met, they commenced an affair, and she got pregnant. I was genuinely glad when I found out that she'd become pregnant, in view that I'd glaringly idea that the baby became mine. However, then, like I'd mentioned earlier, my brother started out traveling extra frequently when I observed out approximately the pregnancy, and even as first of all it failed to trouble me, it started out getting bizarre. While he might touch my wife's pregnant stomach and talk into it, my ex advised me that it wasn't that massive of a deal. However, I just couldn't shake off a sneaking suspicion that my brother had greater to do with the child. Then he became letting on. 6 months into the being pregnant, I decided to undergo her telephone even as she was asleep, and it confirmed everything that I changed into. Frightened of the texts among my ex and my brother proved that it turned into actually his infant, and they've been together for a while now. Not simplest that my ex had no goal of ever letting me understand that the baby wasn't even mine. She and my brother planned on telling me about the affair after the infant turned into born, after which she'd get a divorce from me and subsequently get with my brother, whilst they'd stay off the fortune with the kid help that I'll be paying the subsequent morning. I requested her approximately the texts, and whilst she did try to deny it in the beginning, she finally gave up and confessed that was the give up of my marriage of 2 years and properly of direction. My parents sided with my brother and my ex. All their phrases, approximately the two of us being similarly vital to them, were simply words in any case. While my ex and my brother announced our divorce on social media and her decision to marry him, my whole own family was absolutely supportive in their decision. Nobody cared that they had ruined my mental health and damaged my consider. Not just that, my ex were lying to me for 6 months and telling me that the toddler changed into mine. It felt as even though I'd now not simply lost my wife, however, additionally, my youngster, and it just hurt so much. My parents told me that this was for the pleasant and yet again refused to even act like my brother had wronged me. They in truth advised me that I need to be happy that my ex and brother had finally determined happiness and ought to be part of the celebrations once more. I reduced them out of my life, and that messed up my divorce as nicely. My ex-wife walked away with a massive settlement, some in my car, all due to the fact my circle of relatives became on my spouse's aspect within the divorce, due to the fact she changed into with my brother. Now she and her legal professional cooked up some story, approximately how I become toxic and controlling and forced her to cease her process, although it was her personal choice and my family strengthened it by announcing that the reason they had cut me off inside the first area turned into because of my misogynistic mindset and temper tantrums. So the evidence became stacked towards me and I lost lots of money in the divorce, but fortunately I were given to keep the house. While the divorce became finalized, I became simply satisfied that I changed into carried out with this crap now. And wouldn't ought to see any of those god-awful people ever once more. Luckily there may be no waiting period for a divorce where I live, and my ex-wife failed to contest it either, so I became able to wrap it all up as speedy as viable in order that I could flow on with my existence. It became hard to neglect about all of this, however. I drowned myself in paintings and pushed myself to be better in order that I may want to circulate on from this nasty episode as rapid as I could. That paid off due to the fact that 2 weeks ago I got a promotion, better position, better income, and better enterprise. The works basically, and I couldn't have been happier about it, so I decided to treat myself to a solo dinner date at considered one of my preferred restaurants. However, I made the mistake of posting approximately at online, and within an afternoon or to my mother contacted me and requested me to come visit them. I was baffled as to what they may likely want from me now, since we hadn't even spoken after the divorce changed into finalized, and that they supported my ex and her lies. I managed to disregard it for some days, but then she began calling me relentlessly, and ultimately, whilst not anything else worked, she showed as much as my office. She truly refused to depart and got right into a fight with the receptionist, which changed into quite embarrassing, so I promised that I'd visit in some days, which changed into how I become finally capable of convince her to leave multiple days after that. I eventually visited my family. They had used the agreement amount to transport into a larger house so they might accommodate the baby as well, who'd been born only a little over 3 weeks in the past. I guessed that the alimony become additionally being used to pay the bills, but reality, be advised, it did not surely have an effect on me that a whole lot, because the alimony was a honestly small a part of my salary at this factor, and I ought to manage to pay for it. My brother wasn't home and my ex changed into asleep, so it changed into simply my mother and father, who spoke to me. I did not attempt to make any small talk, and definitely waited for them to get to the factor, so after around 5 minutes of silence, my father blurted out that my brother were fired from his job in the Elimin settlement, just weren't reducing it anymore. They said that they'd seen the publish about my advertising and were hoping that I could help them out, since they had been jogging low on money. Now my dad and mom retired a long term ago, my brother changed into out of a job, and my ex obviously wasn't going return to paintings anytime soon. The alimony wasn't enough to pay the payments for a circle of relatives of 5, mainly with a newborn in the house. And I knew that too. However, I become greatly surprised that they had even had the audacity to technique me for it after the whole thing that had befell. I become so greatly surprised that I did not even have something to mention for a terrific little while, but in the end I came to my senses and decided that I failed to need to entertain any of this. I clearly were given up and left without a phrase. Once I reached the door and opened it, I discovered my brother's status out of doors. My parents had been telling me to live returned and hear them out, and my brother seemed a touch alarmed to see me there. I still did not say anything and proceeded to depart. It become raining quite heavily, and it became a quick stroll to where I'd parked my car out of doors, their lawn, so I were given absolutely sopping wet, and I became already in a terrible mood now, that is, in which I might have been due to the fact my dad and mom and brother got here after me, and at the same time as I become seeking out my keys in my pocket, they determined to ask me for assist one final time, and this time it become my brother who become making the plea. He's constantly been boastful and arrogant, a direct end result of the manner our mother and father dealt with us, so it turned into bizarre to look him asking me for help, and it need to have taken plenty of problem to persuade him so that they were certainly being honest. Approximately the awful section. Besides, I type of misplaced my cool and ended up telling them to depart me by myself, and that they might beg at the streets if they had been genuinely that hard-pressed for coins, considering a stranger who knew not anything. Approximately them become probably more likely to take pity on their condition than I changed into, having stated that I were given in my vehicle and drove away, leaving them within the rain. I'm no longer going to lie, it changed into quite gratifying to do that to my circle of relatives, since they'd done nothing but Mr. me my entire existence. It's been 2 days. Because that passed off, and properly, I'm not certain if I'm proper anymore. My mother has been texting me non-stop, and I sense so guilty for not supporting them out. I know I even have lots in sending them a bit cash, may not without a doubt harm me. However, after the whole thing this has occurred, it just seems like I'm being used, quite frankly, so either for not supporting my circle of relatives out with money when they took my ex's facet in the divorce replace one, so I determined not to assist them out. It became a pretty massive deal for me, seeing that I felt particularly guilty, approximately how I became simply going to desert them. However, then I found out that, well, they'd been doing that to me, my complete lifestyles, or even inside the divorce, that they had been those who had thrown me below the bus, so why should I assume 2 times earlier than doing the identical to them? I told my mom to stop pestering me. In any other case I'd be forced to get my lawyers worried, and it wouldn't quit well for them now. That clearly irked them, and so my brother showed as much as my house some days ago to speak to me. He informed me that even as he felt sorry for how I'd been dealt with my whole early life, he couldn't help the fact that he just turned into inherently higher than me. That is why he become also handled like that. And he additionally told me that I need to prevent being so weird with our parents for doing what another normal determined could have finished of their region and just helped them out, given that they may be in a hard spot, as opposed to preserving grudges like a baby. I laughed in his face due to how truly demented he sounded. Speak crap like that. I instructed him that in preference to trying to position me down and manipulate me into helping them out, he must probably be out looking for a process and not losing his time like this. That touched a nerve, I assume, and he started out yelling at me approximately how I changed into simply jealous of the reality that now, not simply our parents, but even my ex-wife preferred him over me, and I become taking revenge by means of refusing to provide my circle of relatives cash. I did not even hassle to combat lower back, and simply agreed with him, pronouncing that all that I become simply to get revenge on him, and there wasn't much that he may want to do about it. So he got extremely frustrated and informed me that he changed into going to come back after me and pressured me to cough up the money one way or some other, and I'd regret ever speaking to him that way. Truly, I'm not taking any of that severely in the least. He can attempt to scare me all he needs, but it's simply no longer going to paintings due to the fact I recognize he is now not able to doing something at all. To me, I'm unbothered. Replaced too nicely. 3 days in the past, my brother visited me and tried to persuade me to help them. However, he turned into unsuccessful. My parents have already attempted in the past, and it did not exercise session for them either. So this time my ex determined to call me up and communicate to me. I changed into skeptical, approximately answering, but then I determined to reply besides, because if I didn't, then that they had likely visit again and waste some more of my time. So I spoke to her, and it become insane how entitled and cruel these humans may be. She started very in a well-mannered way and advised me that, like I already knew, she and her circle of relatives had been struggling with cash, and even as she found out that I had definitely no want to help them after whatever that they had put me via, she still desired me to think about it and be the bigger individual, right? Here she tried to make me sympathetic by reminding me that my parents had paid for everything growing up, or even she had completed her excellent to be a good spouse. Like, yeah, sure, except for the element in which my mother and father failed to deliver a rattling approximately me, and continually preferred my brother, and she or he simply ended up cheating on me with the equal brother I used to whinge about. So yeah, that failed to paintings at all, and I informed her that even as I felt lousy about what became going on to them, I was already spending numerous pointless money through paying her alimony, which she technically failed to even deserve on account that she cheated on me but controlled to get it out of me, considering the fact that my family had no qualms about lying and making me the terrible guy for his or her advantage. She commenced sobbing on call and informed me that I changed into being selfish and heartless, which became just ironic after I still refused to help. She informed me that my brother was right and that I left her without a preference but to get the law concerned, and said that she became going to demand a higher alimony now and drag me to court to humiliate me over again. Definitely I'd want to see them try the primary time around. I changed into so emotionally drained and depressed that I failed to even trouble preventing returned or seeking to show them incorrect. I just gave in and agreed to pay the alimony without even attempting to show their claims as fake. I never turned into toxic or controlling or any of those things that they claimed, so she had no reason to cheat on me, and so did not deserve a single greenback out of the divorce. But something I did not care then, and just wanted to get the divorce over with regardless of the financial effect of it this time, even though I'm ready to fight and make certain that I educate my circle of relatives the lesson of an entire life. Replace 3 in a surprising flip of events. My wife was actual to her words for the first time and in fact filed for a better amount as alimony, given that I'd been promoted. However, this time, I wasn't going to permit matters slide so effortlessly. I were given all our commonplace pals concerned and informed them anything was happening, or even stuffed them in on past events, because most of them Simplest knew that we'd separated and failed to even understand, approximately, the actual purpose. They had been all glaringly, very greatly surprised, and I told them that I wished them to testify towards my wife. If it came all the way down to it, and they agreed simply, I additionally instructed my legal professional that I wanted to discontinue the entire alimony arrangement altogether, considering she did not deserve it in the least. I spent the past few days gathering all the proof I should find of my mother and father and brother being horrible. Those who never stricken to deal with me like an identical, and are actually hounding me for cash just due to the fact they understand about my promoting. I'd had sufficient, and I needed to eliminate these disgusting parasites once and for all, so I wasn't going to stop and think about their feelings at all. I managed to convince some of my cousins who'd watched me get handled like an intruder in my very own domestic while developing up to speak on my behalf, and they have been type enough to do so as nicely, even though we were in no way specifically near or anything. My lawyer changed into quite thrilled with something we would controlled acquire and advised me that this will be airtight and we would honestly be able to stop paying alimony. It'd become already recognized that she cheated on me, however the motives given by means of my ex portray me because the villain and my brother as the hero who race rescued her were all lies. And even though I hadn't attempted to fight again the remaining time, I turned into surely going to set the report instantly this time, and I did so to my circle of relatives had actually not anything to say for themselves once I introduced up numerous video testimonials that my buddies and more than one family had recorded in my opt to prove that the entirety that my family had stated turned into a lie, and that I wasn't the form of individual that they made me out to be. I guessed that they had figured they'd be let off the hook this time, just as easily as the final time, but I wasn't that emotionally fragile anymore, and absolutely anything they had put me via had made me lots more potent. So the day before today, it changed into finalized that I may not have to pay my ex any alimony anymore in light of anything new data had surfaced, and I was probably the happiest man on earth after I realized that it become over. It changed into simply so enjoyable to see the conceited look completely wiped off of my family's face, and my ex gave the look of she become going to start crying any 2D now. But yeah, I couldn't care much less about her crying anymore and become simply absolutely done with this whole issue. I'd thought that I'd go home and deal with myself to a few outstanding takeout in a film. However, my family manifestly clearly had to do any and the entirety of their strength to forestall me from experiencing happiness. I changed into only a few yards away from my house when I noticed my brother's car parked proper outside my domestic, and I turned into truly confused as to why he'd be there. I still went in, and there has been my circle of relatives status out of doors, my door, and blockading my manner in. I turned into very greatly surprised, and didn't even know what to mention, but I determined to act like this failed to hassle me and advised them to get off my belongings if they did not want me to call the police. It is whilst my dad spoke up and instructed me that I must be ashamed of myself for what I'd carried out today. He went directly to lecture me about how I had no sense of responsibility towards my family and had betrayed them all by refusing to assist them out once they wanted it the maximum. After he changed into accomplished. I truly refused to reply or have interaction in any kind of communication with him, and stood there silently. I simply did not need to offer them the pride of having a upward thrust out of me, because I'm guessing that's what the aim was, to get me so emotional that sooner or later I'd surrender and do something rash and silly. But I'm no longer an idiot, and their desperate measures were not going to assist their case at all, which they need to have realized through then. My silence in all likelihood pissed them off even more, and even though my mother demanded that I deal with my dad with respect and communicate to him, I still refused to speak. I should see them getting agitated because they truly hoped for a massive combat, but nothing of the sort turned into taking place. After a few extra yelling, my brother eventually snapped and grabbed me by way of the collar. He then proceeded to try and hit me, but my dad controlled to drag him again just in time, even as he yelled approximately how I turned into nothing. However, only a jealous loser who might by no means amount to something. I mean, it changed into surely funny coming from an unemployed man nonetheless residing with his mother and father and begging his brother for money to stay on. But okay, I told them that they needed to depart. In any other case, I'd absolutely name the police officers, and seeing how they may be broke, they ought to possibly make a run for it. Within the next 5 minutes, begrudgingly they went away, however, now not earlier than one final ditch attempt by my mother to disgrace me into coughing up a few money. It nevertheless didn't work, and subsequently they left. It's been almost a day, considering that they haven't tried to contact me on account that, and And I'm actually hoping that it stays this way now. Now directly to the next tale story 2, located out wife cheated on me with my stepdaughter's father, so I divorced her immediately. My 33-meter spouse 33F cheated on me in December. I walked in on them at his residence as I knew what turned into happening. It turned into my stepdaughter's father. I have been kicking him off our property for years and maintaining his anger in. Take a look at. I spent all day looking after the house, the pets, the backyard and her daughter for F. When we were given married, she had me donate my beater so I should force one in every of her motors. I even did a little component time work on the aspect of the regulation firm she works at. My days started out at 6 o'clock a.m. and ended as late as 2 a.m. some nights because of all the chores I become accountable for. I tried to forgive her but endured catching her speaking to him and even making plans to sleep with different male buddies, all at the same time as assuring me she desired us to paintings. She abused me sexually and emotionally, telling me that cheating became my fault because I should have finished something to prevent it, and using guilt and threats to make me have intercourse together with her when I turned into clean. I wasn't equipped for that. She were given pregnant once I caught her with him, and I requested for a DNA. Take a look at as an alternative. She went and were given an abortion at once, and blamed me for that too. I determined to go away last month and stop my process on account that then my family has been supporting me and I wore every day to get away from bed and even just feed myself. We have been married less than a year. I am getting no spousal assist, no vehicle needed to depart my process, misplaced half of my own family, her circle of relatives, my stepdaughter. I haven't any home domestic and was left with no cash. If it wasn't for my own family helping me, I would be absolutely homeless. My intellectual health is in a bad place, as I even have found out that dishonest was occurring even when we had been simply courting. It changed into all foe or a few form of sport for her. And I'm left to choose up the pieces. I was cheated on and abused, and I am the best one being punished. Am advised, there is little I can do by means of my lawyer, whom I trust a top-notch deal. He's a relied on circle of relatives, friend. What do I do with all this emotion? How do I fix myself? I understand I need to take infant steps, get some other task, etc. But leaving the house appears like an insurmountable mission right now. I'm struggling with extreme depression and anxiety in public. Even being with my buddies is extraordinarily taxing and leaves me a sobbing mess. Once I eventually can force home, I sense damaged and nothing is getting better, and I do not know what to do. Replace one ex-wife, bringing a P to our divorce. Listening to title says it all. A chum informed me that my ex-wife might be bringing the AP to the divorce hearing as a very last jab at me. How need to I deal with this? Numerous buddies have presented to return as assist. However, some have stated I must simply do my quality to ignore them. What might you do? Replace to my divorce hearing turned into. Ultimately, these days my submit history includes my complete tale, but I turned into abused by my ex-spouse after catching her in our bed with another guy days after Christmas. Final year I tried R, but as time went on I saved catching her talking to the equal guy, or even making plans to head see others out of town while getting inappropriate sexual Snapchats and texts from all of them, even as mendacity to my face and telling me she has reduced touch. Every single time same story. I eventually informed her I was leaving and could be submitting for divorce, and he or she informed me once more that if I left she would kill. Inform me. Here we are, although I am alive and he or she is completely out of my existence. I came home from the courthouse and hit some new maxes in the gymnasium, and I'm all around feeling awesome. She doesn't recognize wherein I stay, moved out of Metropolis, and he or she does not know in which my new task is. This female, who I love dearly and could have carried out anything for, took the entirety from me: my task, my car, my domestic, my stepdaughter, my marriage, my intellectual fitness, and probably my baby, despite the fact that I am assured it was a PS baby. She aborted it when I requested for a DNA test. This entire year has been an endless hell for me, and all of the while she blamed me for leaving and tearing apart our family. By the time she arrived this morning, I became already talking to my lawyer. We simply needed to be gift and get the papers signed by the judge. I never looked at her once, no longer, even if she attempted at hand me mail from the residence. I just grabbed it and kept on foot. I did observe that AP did not come along with her bizarre, for the reason that she had been saying to mutual friends he would be coming with the entirety proceeds. Equality. I changed into careworn and emotional on the inner. However, I stored a mild smile on my face and stored my spirits high. She became sounding like she became about to cry, but I in no way regarded. It wasn't until I were given domestic that I observed to be aware, jumbled together with my male AP. wasn't there due to the fact he got some other lady he was seeing pregnant. I tore it up and threw it away. She had a loving husband, and she or he cheated, lied and hurt me till I left her, and he or she did it for a loser that becomes seeing different ladies. Anyway, the cherry on pinnacle is that AP hates being a father. He's lazy, beat my ex-wife after they were together, and drops his daughter off together with his mom anytime he has her. She called him via his first name and called me dad due to the fact she slightly knew the fellow. His personal mother cried on Christmas, whilst we shared a drink, because she changed into so satisfied her grand after had me in her existence. This new child will wreck his existence. Even in addition, my most effective wish is that whomever he's having this child with receives away from him ASAP, for the baby's sake, no matter how high energy I am. I sense very alone nowadays, and I'm bouncing among very happy and really muted. Sorry if that is all around the region. I'm just feeling very atypical. Idea it would feel better. However, if I'm being honest, I desire none. People were struggling